Your Lending Era, the podcast where we deep dive into the world of residential, business and commercial finance, bringing you expert insight, tips and strategies to help you navigate the intricate landscape of lending in Australia. I'm one of your hosts, Jessica, and in today's episode, we're going to talk through our personal tips and tricks to grow your savings. We will also be going through a few of the things that make our ears burn when we hear them, particularly for our boomer friend David Thomas, who has joined us at the table today. So here with me, we have David and Hope.
Hey, Jess.
Hey, Jess.
Hi, guys. Are we excited for this one?
I am actually. I thrive on this.
You thrive on this?
I do. I love a budget, love savings.
I've always loved a budget, so yeah, let's get stuck into it.
We're going to see a little bit of a red mist. We went through the list on the way here, and one topic in particular, Dave, he had an opinion about.
He's passionate about it.
We have different opinions on different things due to our age, but I think that's what kind of makes the three of us work well.
That's such a dad way to say, they had a really bad opinion, but mine was right.
Always.
My generation's opinion is correct. Yours is wrong.
You guys just need to work more and complain less.
What did Dave just say? I like people working for me that work hard until they drop dead or something.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, okay. God, if I ever get any pain down my left side, I won't let you know. Okay, guys, let's start. First off, we have all done the hard yards on saving for our own home at some stage in our lives. I'd like to think we're all pretty good at saving a penny, aren't we?
Yeah, I think we are. Look, it's not me sitting at the table owning a Porsche, but I have bought a property in the past, and there's been certain things like a wedding and holidays and different things that I've had to save for. And I think part of being an adult is being able to prioritise things that are really important to you. And you're going to have to make some sacrifices in order to save for certain things along the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there's not always needs to be, I need to save because of this thing. Sometimes it's, I need to save because something might happen. Right? There's an unknown.
That's a generational thing, I think.
We just need to make sure that we're putting money aside when we can for the future.
And once you've got some of those big things out of the way, it's really good just to jump into that habit of always, every time you get a paycheck, put some money away.
Yeah, 100%. Now let's start running through our kind of little list here of our favourite ways to save money. So first one is the simple term of creating a budget.
Go, Dave.
I run a household budget that would put most businesses to shame.
It's the spreadsheet enthusiast at the table.
Correct. So I run a household budget that looks like a month-to-month P&L. And it has, and I don't like to call it a budget because I think budgeting is boring. I like to call it a cash flow forecast.
Here we go.
Makes it sound much more attractive than what it is.
Yeah.
But in a cash flow forecast, you will put your big bills when they fall due in the columns of the months where they fall due. So for argument's sake, your rates and your water and your extra bits and pieces, they'll all fall, every quarter. So they go in every quarter. And I have an opening balance of cash for the month and then all the bills that I expect to go out for the month. And then I have an estimated closing balance for the bank account at the end of the month. So as we sit here, I know that my cash flow forecast can tell me how much money will be in my family's bank account on the 30th of June next year, right? Which to many people would seem ridiculous, but for me, that's budgeting or cash flow forecasting. So, so what I would say there is know how you get paid, when you get paid, what your pay cycle is, and what your yearly pay cycle is. Like if you're commission and you get paid more sometimes a year than other times, you need to know how much money you need to have in the bank to cover you for the lean times, especially if that's when all your bills are due. Yep. So plan for the month, plan for the quarter, plan for the year. Know when your income's coming in and know when your expenditure's going out. And as soon as you can map that out, then you just copy-paste to the next year. Yeah. And it just becomes something.
I suppose the legwork is the first year. Yeah. You look a bit crazy for the first year, but...
And that's macro budgeting. So Jess is going to talk about macro and micro budgeting. That's just a macro tip, right? Yeah. Plan it out. Know when the income's coming in, know when the expenses are going out.
That's big dog tips, I think. I don't think I have incomings and outgoings that are as outrageous as Dave's.
No, we'll talk about like this side of the table. So more on the micro level of budgeting, how would that look for you?
Well, for me personally, I like to keep it super simple. And I have 3 accounts. So one is my spendings account, one is my savings account, and one is my bills account. And I've got a credit card as well. obviously. But I like to manage my money through there. So my pay goes actually directly into my savings account. I know how much money I need to move into my bills account, and then I have like a weekly allowance that I work off. And I've worked off that method for years, and it works really well for me. And I think seeing the pay be distributed into my savings account it's an incentive in itself. To try and, keep that growing instead of, debiting from it all the time.
I fall somewhere in the middle. I'm kind of like a micro, but I'm definitely not a macro. Like I haven't excelled my partner yet for the year. It probably will happen. I'm pretty young. But I'm quite similar with you, Hope, where I have designated accounts. So I don't have a bills account per se, but I do just have like my salary goes into one. We cut that in half and move it to savings kind of situation.
Let's go.
I know, it's just so hard to have no debt. It's such a problem. No, but it's gotten to a point where it's generally you're able to kind of predict things, but then I'm a little bit less traditional in the sense that when I do have large things like your rego or your insurance, I'm happy enough just to pull that out of the savings because I'm really putting all of my kind of annual things in one lump, and I know that they always fall due in August because it's my birth year. Oh, sorry, my birth month, like gift from God. Here's all your rego. Could you imagine? So I'm happy to take those things out rather than setting them aside for the bills, but I think that's sometimes where people can get a little slipped up if they don't have the control to say, okay, but this isn't essential. Yeah. Like if you really liked, a jacket at Zara and you're like, I'll just take it out of my savings. I do that when I've got rego due, but you've got to have an ability to differentiate your rego and the jacket at Zara.
Yeah, back to what I said initially, it was the prioritising.
Yeah.
Rego obviously is a given. You need to pay your rego. Do you need the jacket at Zara? I would say probably yes, but
probably yeah.
Probably, but you've got to have that restraint when you've got savings goals that you're trying to reach.
100%. And I think one way that we've seen quite a few of our clients particularly succeed with savings is the way that they're managing their salary deposits per se.
It is. So you can actually, there's a crafty way that you can go to HR and say, I want $500 of my pay to actually go into this separate account. And so you don't have to organise that money once it comes to you. It'll go straight into your hopefully nominated savings account and then it just sits there. And you can lock savings accounts as well so that once that money goes in, so if that $500 is directed there by payroll, you can't withdraw it for the Zara jacket.
Yeah. Actually, one of my friends does this meticulously. Every pay he will put a designated amount into another account, via HR. And because he's never had access to it, he doesn't miss that money at all.
Yep.
And how often do you truly check your payslip when it comes through? Like you don't even know that it's there.
Yep.
And he doesn't have access to that via internet banking. So anytime he needs money, he has to go down to the branch, get a little check drawn up. Yeah. And it's that element of inconvenience that really does stop people in their tracks.
It does. And it means that the money that you are left with, that residual balance, that's all you've got. Yeah. So you've got to learn to work within that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's actually how I bought my first house. I had all my salary go into one account and I had all my commissions go into another account. And those commissions just built up over time. And that's how Sarah and I bought our first home.
Back when you were wheeling and dealing cars.
Back a long time ago. So
no, I can't imagine you selling cars. I know wheeling and dealing, that was actually a pretty good one, wasn't it?
It was quick. I can imagine you selling cars.
Well, I was young.
Yeah, I can't imagine that, but
we haven't seen that side of you. Now, let's talk a little bit about how using a goal can help you grow your savings.
So I talked a bit about, before about you don't always have to have a goal, but gee whiz, it sure helps. So if there is something that you're looking for in the future, it might be house, right? Might be car, might be something smaller, might be a holiday, right?
Or a jet ski. We had a client just say for a jet ski.
Jet ski, something fun, right? So, that's definitely an incentive to help you move towards those goals. And then, on the side of that, you can just save because, but if you are saving just because, and then something comes up, if you've already got a head start into the big item, it makes your life so much easier. So it just really kind of helps you get more motivated to finish it off.
And I think it's really nice to reward yourself. Like when you've saved 2,000, 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, whatever it may be, to treat yourself to a nice dinner. You know, buy the Zara jacket, go and do something that, you know, it doesn't cost an exorbitant amount of money, but it just gives you that, you know, reward to be like, you've saved hard, you're working hard, we're getting there slowly, let's keep going.
Because it can become very easily mentally taxing when you're saving to feel like you don't have anything to do or to look forward to, because it almost becomes guilty.
Yeah.
But I know even when I was younger, I worked at Domino's as a teenager, and I paid for a trip, like a big trip to Europe and Southeast Asia and all of those things, typically as you do when you're 18 and you know everything about the world. And all of that was kind of saved for myself, and it was easy to do that as a teenager because I was saving for a goal. But once that goal was gone and I got back, I was like, well, what's the point of saving? Like, there's nothing to save for. I've done it now.
Yeah.
So really doing, as Hope said, you know, once you do get to, say, $5,000, maybe you can spend $500 on an immediate fun thing, whether that be going out for a night with the girls or, you know, getting your hair done, which I would say is almost a necessity sometimes.
It absolutely is.
But, you know, you've got to kind of make it equally fun for you, because no one wants to have to say no to everything in life, and then savings goal hits and you're like, oh, now I don't want to spend it because I'm actually really tight.
Yeah, it's like a cheat meal when you're dieting.
Oh,
something to look forward to.
Yeah, you guys, I think, went to the gym this morning, didn't you?
Yeah, we did. I'm actually in agony sitting here right now. But...
And you're going to go get Super Bowl some treat lunches, aren't we?
We are. See, it's all about balance, guys.
It is. Balance. Let's talk as well, something that we often advise our clients to do at an initial point in their discussion, and that's paying down debts.
Yeah, so I read this really valuable article years ago, and it's always stuck with me that if you are carrying a little bit of debt, so say you've got some lay-by there, you've got a credit card, maybe you've got a larger personal loan or car loan, it's really hard to save for, say, a house deposit when you're paying back those other debts as well. Yep. So what I tell my clients is the best thing we can do is just pick the smallest debt, which normally these days is the Afterpay, Zip Pay, Zip Money.
Latitude cards and things like that.
Latitude cards, just start small and get rid of those first, then move into the credit card, try and get rid of that, and then, you know, if there's a personal loan left, then we chip away at that as well. And it just frees up cash flow, and then obviously stops you paying all this extra interest, so that when it is time to start saving for that big one, you're so much further ahead than where you were when you were carrying, you know, all of that personal debt that you just don't really need.
Yeah, and high interest rate personal debts do nibble away at your capacity. So you know, quite often I'll look at a client statement position and we'll say, oh, you know, they've got this $10,000 credit card, and they're like, oh, yeah, I've always had it. And you're like, okay, do you ever pay it off? And they're like, nope, I just, you know, chip away at it. I'm like, yeah, but that's at 20%. That's $2,000 a year. That you've got to earn maybe $3,500, pay the tax to end up with the $2,000. So if your boss walked in tomorrow and said, hey, I'm going to reduce your pay by $3,500 a year, you'd throw your pen on the desk and storm out, right? But you are controlling your own cash flow to that same point, and not even kind of realising how much, you know, damage you're doing to your cash flow. So, you know, $10,000 credit card that you never clear, $54 a week that's what costs you in interest. So.
Someone's had the Excel spreadsheet out, haven't they? My goodness. But and on that point as well, paying down the debts, I think where we see often people go wrong is they make the decision we're going to pay everything off early at the same time. And that's where you're still getting charged interest on everything simultaneously. You'd be better off making the minimums on the bulk and just one at a time, getting rid of a credit card, getting rid of the personal loan, maybe the car leases last, chipping away when we get to that point. Because if you are paying off everything early at the same time, you're not necessarily getting ahead. You're just lessening your cash flow, aren't you?
Absolutely. And I think that when people choose the smallest debt first and they get rid of it, it's like a reward too. You're like, oh, I did that. All right, that's gone. What's the next one? On to the next. And then they just slowly chip away and clear this debt. And then it becomes this, like their savings journey becomes a lot easier too, because they're used to putting that money away to clear that other debt. And then they can see their savings account grow. And it's like, that's the dream. That's what we're after.
I know for me in my early 20s, and I hope you guys can relate, and I'm not over here on my own.
I'll probably be able to, but not sure about this one.
We've all, speaking for two of us maybe, had the experience where we got a credit card or a credit facility and just were never educated about how it was going to be used and how liberating it felt to close it off finally? When you
Yeah.
finally were like, I have been taken for a ride.
Yeah.
I didn't understand how this worked, but now it's gone.
I think the struggle for me is that in my early 20s, my income was really low.
Same.
But my shopping addiction was really high.
Yeah.
So I had a credit card and I was like, I can buy the Zara jacket. I can buy all this makeup
Yeah.
and, just spending money on stupid things as you do in your early 20s. And that, I think, taught me a really valuable lesson early on that it's borrowed money. It's not my money, and that it does need paid back. And that's really hard to do when you're in your early 20s and, probably one of your first jobs on a fairly low salary as I was, and you can get yourself into a little bit of trouble too because you've still got to pay rent and other things and then also maintain this credit card that's maxed out. And that opens up a world of pain in some instances.
Yeah, because I know it's always easier to spend money, but even when you've got to pay a credit card bill, you still feel like this disappointment of letting that money go.
Like, I don't want to. Like, I have to, but I don't want to.
No one wants to. Now, let's talk about something that other people, I know I've had this experience myself, haven't wanted to do for the social scare it causes, but that's cancelling memberships or things that necessarily aren't working for you.
And in today's direct debits, it's just so easy to put something on a direct debit that becomes a membership, and especially, iPhones these days, there's about 28 different apps that you can have a monthly subscription to, plus on top of that gym memberships, plus on top of that, wine clubs and all that kind of stuff. So sometimes one of the most liberating things when I talk to families and we do a refinance and we say, move from bank A to bank B and we're going to move the transaction account over or the transaction accounts over, and then they actually do a bit of a stock take on all the direct debits that were coming out of the other account. And they go, actually, I don't need this. I don't need this. I'm going to cancel this. I'm going to cancel that. Or when your credit card gets stolen or lost or whatever and you've got to move those direct debits over. Just do a stock take, either, on a yearly basis or a 6-monthly basis. If you don't use it, turn it off.
Yeah.
So, that's my tip.
I think... And I've just done a big cull actually because I just had so many subscriptions. Like there's no human on earth that needs like Netflix and Stan and Binge and KO and all of, I've got Disney for my son, so I guess like we kept Disney.
Do you know what? It's worth it.
It is worth it. It's the most expensive one. It's $140 a year now.
Yeah, it's because they know the kids need it.
The parents actually need it more than the kids. But I've just gone through and been like, right, so no one needs 10 subscriptions to watch different movies and, TV shows. So we culled that down to, I think it was just Disney and Netflix. And then I also didn't need Spotify Premium and Apple Music and what's the other one? Google something?
Yeah, there's a Google.
See, I don't even know. Like, that's just ridiculous.
You were just paying for it.
I was like, no. So Spotify only. Just gone through different things. MyFitnessPal actually is another one that was just coming out every month that I didn't even realise, and I've had that for a long time. So I definitely think, as Dave was saying, it's worth going through your bank statements and your subscriptions on your phone and making sure that you're not just wasting money. Yeah. And it's you've culled it to a point where you're only using the ones that you actually use.
Yeah, because there's nothing stopping you from, if you do need it, restarting it.
Yeah, that's it.
Like there's no contracts in 99% of these subscription services, are there?
Yeah, no.
I think another one that we're seeing more and more is kind of these subscription services that almost deliver like a little present to you once a month, like whether it be like the socks. There's a few companies that do like new socks every month, new undies, wine and cocktail premixes, all of those things that, like, yes, it's instant gratification when it arrives because it's like, oh, past me gave future me a little gift. But at the same time, you've got to acknowledge the premium that you're paying to have that little moment of happiness when you probably could have just gone to Liquorland and grabbed a bottle of Shiraz on the way home,
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Jess.
Not that I want to, condone drinking, but that was my example.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that you chose that, not the undies.
Not the undies, yeah. I was going down that route. I don't know how you would need 5 new pairs of undies a month. What's happening to you 5 times a month to ruin 5 pairs?
Well, I don't know, but there's a toilet paper company that's on direct debit too.
There is.
So it delivers to your door.
I do support the toilet paper one though, because it is frustrating to try and manage carrying 2 bags of groceries and a 30 pack of toilet paper
It's a pain.
And we've got stairs in our property and something's got to stay at the bottom, and 9 times out of 10 it'll be the heavy stuff, and then that means my partner has to pick it up and I'm like carrying a kilo of toilet paper looking like it's hard. But yeah, some of them I can get around, but other things that were designed for convenience, at some point you've got to say, is it more convenient or is it more costly? Because if you're going to the shops anyways to pick up a steak and a potato, just go to aisle 12 and get yourself some toilet paper.
Especially just bringing it back to what we're trying to talk about, especially if you've got savings goals that you're
100%.
trying to reach, then you're going to have to make small sacrifices like walking to aisle 12 just until you've hit that savings goal and achieved whatever it is that you're trying to do. And then maybe we can go back to
and
the easy road.
Living in a budgeted way isn't forever. Like if you hit the goal and you buy a house, then you can probably calm down for a little while and things go back to normality.
Yeah.
Then you pay a mortgage and you realise how terrible it all is anyways. Now let's talk about something. This is the topic that really set Dave off. It was like we had Joe Rogan in the car. I will say it was fiery, exchanging. Now that is learning to say no in life.
To social gatherings.
Yeah, that's Dave's thing.
The nights out. So I'll just put my 2 cents in first before we have to sit here and listen to Dave.
Old Mr. Rogan.
So for me personally, I have a severe case of FOMO, fear of missing out. Like if there's something happening, if there's a wedding going on, if it's a girls' night out, I find it really hard to say no.
You're impulsive with the fun.
Well, yeah, because I'm a social gal. So, like, I want to go out and have fun.
Yeah.
And I've also, like, I feel like Dave might disagree, but I work quite hard. I like to go out and reward myself that way. And I love a wedding. I love a social event. But in saying that, before we bought our first house, there was a lot of things that I said no to because a night out, like with drinks and if you have dinner as well and then, Ubers and obviously Macca's when you're done before you go home, it can get really expensive if you're doing that like every weekend. And now that I'm a parent as well, obviously that's not a viable option.
Few and far in between.
It is few and far between, which is fine. But there are definitely things in general that I find really hard to say no to. Dave, on the other hand, has a slightly different perspective on this.
Look, I just think in terms of that social, what you're expected to pay for socially, I think itemise like some of these things that people are asking others to pay for from a social perspective is nowadays outrageous and didn't exist back in my day, So these,
He's getting red.
Bloody destination weddings that cost a couple $2,000 or $3,000 to go to for your long lost cousin. Sometimes, mate, say no. $2,000 or $3,000 in your bank, you've got to earn $5,000 to get the $3,000. Like, just that's a no.
Yeah.
Someone that you went to the gym with 6 years ago who's now having a baby shower, well, maybe that's a no. So, decide. Don't say no to everything, but decide which ones are the important ones and which ones aren't. Which ones you are close enough to the person to justify the expenditure. There's some people in my life that I would travel to Europe for their wedding, no questions at all. There are others that I wouldn't travel to, Cessnock, So I think...
Dave probably wouldn't even go to like a Mittagong.
No, for some. But, so make a decision, is this worthy of taking money out of my savings? If it is, great. Pull the trigger on it, get it done. But, there's so many, I talk to so many clients that are like, we had this baby shower and we had this gender reveal and we had this, kitchen tea and then we had this, I had to buy a bridesmaid's dress and I'm like, oh, that's great that you're in the bridal party. And they're like, oh, no, there was 8 of us. And you're like, okay, well, could you have said no to that if you're the 8th bridesmaid?
Yeah.
So just things like that. I think, just work out what's reasonable and what's not reasonable for your set of circumstances. Don't send yourself broke trying to keep up with the Joneses.
No. And I think when your eye's on the prize and as you're getting closer to your savings goal, and I was very much like this before we bought our first house, was it became easier to say no because we were so close. And I was just like, actually, I think we'll give that one a miss. We're about to buy a house and we just can't. I don't like when people say, and I don't like personally saying I can't afford it. And maybe a lot of people feel the same way and they feel maybe a little bit embarrassed when they say, I can't go, I can't afford it. But that is just the reality. Like, especially at the moment, the cost of living is so high anyway. Flights and travel are ridiculous. Yeah. So I think if there was a bride and groom throwing a destination wedding, they would probably be quite understanding that a lot of people might not be able to make it.
And if they weren't, that's not really your problem,
No, it's
unfortunately,
not.
either, is it?
No,
that's
absolutely.
Not for you.
No.
And I think another thing when it comes to learning to say no, once you've started that, and the first time's always going to be terrible because you're going to feel like a shit friend, shit sister, whatever.
Yeah.
But once you've said no, and like you said, you're working towards a goal, it's not about cutting out every bit of joy from your life. Still go to the hens party, you know, if you can justify it.
Yep.
But if it is your colleagues' sisters, maybe just think about what you could be doing with that money instead.
That's right, like buying a house.
Yeah, and David actually, I will say in the middle of his red mist, he did have a good point. And if you start looking at money in the pre to post tax sense, a $3,000 trip away to go to one of your friends' weddings, it's like, oh, it's not that much money. But what did you have to do to earn that? You had to work for 2 whole weeks and, it was hot outside and you could have been in the pool. You've got to look at what you did to get to that point.
Yeah.
Now let's talk a little bit off the back of already a little bit of a session there. Let's chat about some of the bad things or the bad ways that we have heard people try to penny pinch that we don't necessarily agree with here.
Yeah, look, one of the things that I've seen is people cancelling insurance policies. Might be, life insurance or, sickness, TPD, some kind of risk insurance.
Yep.
I'd probably say don't cancel insurances. You took out the insurance because you thought there was a valid need. Definitely shop around. Get a better deal, adjust it. I sometimes talk to people and they're like, oh, we're going to cancel our life insurance. And you're like, okay, why
Maybe
is that?
don't.
And they're like, oh, because it's so expensive. And then you have a look at it and you go, well, it's because you got, $1.5 million worth of life insurance, but your home loan's $400,000.
Yeah.
If you die, what do you want to happen? I want to make sure my partner is provided for and the house is paid off. Well, great. Let's adjust it down to $400,000, adjust the premium and go from there. So don't cancel insurances, adjust them. I think, cancelling them is a bad idea.
Back to that priorities thing. Probably need life insurance.
Yeah,
If
it's
you've
not
got a
something you're going to
mortgage.
regret,
No.
really, when the time comes, unfortunately. And let's talk, actually, something that I know we see a lot, and people always say, give up your coffee every morning. That's $5 a day.
You know what? I don't drink coffee personally, so I can't empathise with this too hard. But I know people that absolutely could not live without their morning coffee, and that's like their thing. And you know what? If $5 a day is your thing and that's what you want to do, then go for it. Like, that's not going to make a gigantic change to your life if you dropped that. And if it keeps you happy and if it peps your step for the day, then do that.
Well, what's the opportunity cost? Like, if it is your thing that gets you going in the morning, you save that $5, and then as a result of that, you're a bit miserable until midday.
Yeah, nah.
Probably not the outcome we want.
Just buy the coffee. It's all good.
Buy the coffee, support the small business that definitely doesn't need our support, but
Buy the coffee, but make better decisions somewhere else.
Yeah.
That's the thing. It's all about sacrificing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then another thing that I often get the giggles about, particularly when you see a property go up for sale, is someone who has potentially scrimped and saved on the repairs of a property.
Oh, God, this kills me.
Yeah, so DIY jobs, yes, you can save money DIY. And look, if you are a carpenter and your brother is a tiler and your other brother is an electrician, great.
Go for gold.
Let's do that. But if that's not your skill set, and if you think you're going to save $5,000 on your kitchen renovation because you're going to do it all yourself, but the end result is you've got a kitchen that looks like it was clearly DIY, you haven't really saved because you've knocked whatever you've saved off the capital gain of your property.
Yeah.
In fact, you've probably knocked 5 times the value of the saving off the property. If you are a great painter or you've got a mate who's a painter, he's going to come around and help you, you're going to have a couple of beers, great. But if you have never painted before and you want to paint your whole house and you don't know how to prep and you don't know how to sand and you don't know, just bring in professionals and get that done. Because in you trying to DIY it, you might be, especially if you're in a sales role and you're taking a weekend off to paint your house, but you could be selling whatever it is that you're selling. Yeah. You've cost yourself money that then, you've got to work out what your time's worth. So, so no to DIY unless you are in that industry.
Unless you're qualified and...
Otherwise, go to work, earn the money,
Pay someone else
to do it. You'll end up with a better result, potentially better capital gain.
But you might actually save money doing that because if you go out and try and do it all yourself and buy all the materials and then it's all got to be scrapped and started from scratch.
Yeah, because the sun hits it and the paint's streaky.
Yeah, and then you've got to pay someone to do it anyway. So that's, in my mind, especially when time is money, you've wasted money.
I did the DIY kind of COVID, tried to do some painting myself, and I regret
Jess.
like every day of that.
It's okay.
It was such a waste because now I've got to pay someone to come in and do a better job than I did because
That's
I
right,
like
keep you
completely
busy.
stuffed up my walls.
Yeah. So we've got
Oh, shame.
we've all got a mutual friend who's a large commercial property owner,
Yeah.
and he always says, "Poor man pays twice." You know,
Yes.
if you get something done cheap, within 12 or 18 months, you're going to have to get it redone again.
Correct.
So,
Yeah,
pay for a good
100%.
quality job and get it done.
Get it
Yeah.
done. Let's talk, pay now. Let's talk a little bit, that term's kind of triggered me into our next one. So we have a lot of people who almost think that they're saving more by manipulating a transaction, don't they?
Yeah, this is the lay-by thing, and it kills me as well. I know I said that about the last one, but this really does kill the vibe. And it's because Afterpay, even though you buy something for $100, and so you pay $25 over the next, I don't know, it's every 2 weeks or
something,
whatever
yeah.
it is, people are like, oh, I can afford it because I don't have to pay the full $100 up front. Mate, if you don't have that $100 on that day, you probably shouldn't be buying it anyway. And there are hidden fees and things within Afterpay, and I personally haven't had Afterpay before, but I remember someone posting about it on a forum that I'm in for finance and budgeting, and there are costs involved. Like you won't actually end up paying the $100. I can't remember exactly what it is, but you will pay more than the $100.
Yeah, 100%. It's too good to be true.
It is. It really is. So my advice is that if you don't have the $100, just don't buy it. Just wait till you do. And it's not going to, especially if you're trying to obtain finance in the future, it doesn't look good from like a lending perspective because it makes it look like you haven't managed your money and you don't have the $100 to buy that thing on that day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if you're going to put in a loan to a bank to borrow $500,000 and they look at your statements and go, what's this? Oh, it's Afterpay. What's it Afterpay for? For a $100 Zara jacket.
Yeah.
They probably don't cost
Cheap
that.
jacket.
Cheap jacket, mate. It's probably
they're
a
like,
tank
well,
top.
Yeah, if you can't afford $100, why are we lending you $500,000?
We're not, so don't.
So tone to it.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that we hear quite a bit, and I don't necessarily agree with it, and it's that idea that renting is the biggest waste of money in the world and you should just suck it up and move back in with mum and dad.
Yeah, and look, this is a twofold thing, right? So, and I think everything needs to be put in its place. So renting a waterfront property when you're a small income earner, that's a waste of money, right? But renting somewhere that you're comfortable with, that you're happy with, that fits well within your budget is not a waste of money, right? It gives you a place that's your own. It gives you mental clarity. It gives you all these, benefits of not being at home with mum and dad.
Independence, the biggest one.
Independence. It shows that you're a fully grown-up person. So maybe it's not dead money. What Jess and I more see from the bank statement point of view of, people who have moved back home with mum and dad to save up, for the first bit, it's great. Okay, so they move in, first month goes by, second month goes by. And then what I see happen is the person that's moved in with mum and dad feels a bit guilty because mum's doing all the washing, cooking all the meals, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. So what we then see is a makeup. Oh, look, I paid for mum and dad to go out to dinner. I paid for mum and dad to do this. Yeah. Mum was doing this, so I bought her flowers and then blah, blah, blah. And we see probably at some points in time up to $2,000 a month going to mum and dad to help out with the house and the household bills and the groceries and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. That's rent.
Your rent was $1,500.
Yeah.
100%.
So just think about how that's actually going to pan out over a 6 or 12-month period before you pull the trigger on that one.
I think that's probably a hard and fast. Like if you're going to make that decision and that commitment to move back in with mum or dad, you need to be a savings warrior during that time and like have a very clear budget and goal of, right, I'm going to do this for 6 months or 12 months and this is how much I'm going to save every month and really stick to that in order to make it worthwhile. Or as Dave said, a couple of months will go by and then things will completely change and you're not going to get there as fast as what maybe initially you thought you were going to.
I think in that area you've really got to set firm boundaries with yourself and the family that you're living with, the expectations, because if it's all well and fine for mum and dad to say, move back in, we won't, you won't have to pay any rent, it's fine, but then they expect you to, do the groceries every second week and what are you saving? Would you rather just be in your own property?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know most people would, I think.
Yeah, like, hey, mum, we're setting a boundary when you're not doing my washing while I live here.
Yeah.
Like, I'm happy to chip in for bills, like power and whatever, while I'm here, but everything else, like, I'm going to do that.
Yeah, exactly. And that then goes into a bit of the saving until it hurts mentality that I know you've definitely seen a few of our clients with this one, Dave.
Yeah, look, the idea that bad budgeting means you need to save every last dollar, no coffees, don't pay for parking, don't drive your car to work, walk, all this kind of stuff. Like, don't make yourself miserable trying to save, right?
No.
You've got to be able to balance both. So
You've still got to live. Like,
Yes,
you know,
correct.
you can't be this miserable, depressed person while you're trying to reach a savings goal.
No.
Like, you still have to live a little bit. Like, maybe parking is okay. Maybe you can drive your car to work. Like, you can buy your coffee. There's different things that you can do to keep your head above the water while you are trying to reach this goal.
Yeah, it's, I guess, trying to put out what your values are and what things are valuable to you. And then maybe just spoiling yourself a little bit with those things. But yeah, just trimming back where you can.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
little treats along the way.
Yeah.
Help make it a lot better.
Like Super Bell.
Like,
Super Bowl.
Yeah. Yeah.
100%.
We trained hard this morning.
Are we sponsored by Zara and Super Bowl? Because they've
we
got
kind of
issues
sound
a
Can we
lot.
be? I would be so happy with it.
I mean, we mention Afterpay a lot, but I don't think they'd pick us up, to be fair.
No, because I don't think we've really said anything nice about them ever.
So-
Okay, I'm going to say a little acronym term here, and I just want first thoughts when you hear it. YOLO.
Do you know what this means?
I'm not that old.
Oh, okay.
Oh, first thoughts. Dave's old.
I just didn't want to make you feel bad. I was just asking.
So now we have on the record.
Yeah, so you only live once, right? So, so you only live once. So there's certain things in your life definitely you're gonna want to do, but find a balance. You don't have to do everything.
Yeah.
But just
I find that when I'm overseas, I live by this, like pretty hard. So obviously I don't go overseas all the time. I do go a couple of times a year though. And when I am overseas, I'm like, you know what? Like, how often am I going to be here? Like, let's just do it. We'll pay for it. Doesn't matter. I'll make more money this year, blah, blah, blah. But I can't live like that all year.
No.
Because, there are things like you need to pay your bills, you need to save, you need to do different things. So I think every now and then it probably doesn't hurt, but you can't live like that all year.
No.
Or you're never going to get, I think you can safely say, if it's a YOLO mentality 24/7, you're not going to get anywhere in life.
No, you're not going to get to the savings goal in particular.
No, you're probably not going to buy a house. You're probably not going to, pay for the wedding of your dreams. You're probably not going to be able to go overseas and do different things or buy an amazing Porsche or whatever. You can't be YOLO all the time, but just sometimes. That's what I do.
My YOLO weakness is August. I'm like, okay, well, I've already had to pay all these car bills to stuff it. It's my birthday as well. I'm going to treat myself something special.
Birthdays are a big one. I'm like, you know what?
But coming off the back of a YOLO period, it's hard.
Yeah.
It's like struggling with like you've got to wean yourself off this little
struggling with addiction. Struggling with addiction.
Yeah, and then I was like, hey, that's not really relevant. But it almost is because you get accustomed to this, I feel so great. I've got this massive serotonin hit every time I swipe my card. And then you've got to almost wean yourself off it, but not wean yourself because then it continues. You just got to put a line in the sand and say, okay, I'm taking my debit card off my phone now. If I want to buy something, I've got to take my wallet.
I reckon you're pretty good with this. Like, I don't see you YOLO a lot, but I think when you do,
you YOLO
you
hard.
Go hard.
Yeah,
but then you can just stop.
Yeah, big things.
Yeah, you're like, you get that massive dose of serotonin, then you're like, I'm good for like 6 months.
Yeah. So and that's maybe that's an age thing. I think when you get older, you prioritise. And I've talked to you heaps of time about the beaker and the rocks and the sand and the water and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the rocks. So sometimes those big things for me are the YOLO moments, and then after that, I've got my hit. I'm good.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all about perspective, and it is. Unfortunately, I think the YOLO cure is just maturity. You've got to get to a point where, because I know you and I hope, for example, in our age group, we've all got friends that are going overseas, having kids, getting married. So you're looking at it and you're like, wow, I want to be doing all of those things.
Yeah.
But materially, no one can do all of those things. And if they are, they're extremely fortunate to be able to do them.
Yeah, that's right. And if you are in the position to be able to like walk into Louis Vuitton and buy a new handbag, then do that. But just don't do it every month.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm envious of that person.
So one day, mate, we'll be there.
Okay, guys. Well, I think this one was actually quite fun. I think all in all, there's a lot of ways to save money. But being active about wanting to start and setting your goal probably is key to getting a good outcome. There's also some pretty dud advice out there for saving money. Generally, try it for 6 weeks. If it's not working for you, I'd throw the paper in the bin and start again. Yep. There's so many tools at everyone's disposal. I know Facebook and Instagram, so many pages that you can follow. I know I'm part of ones like $10 meals, budget planning.
Of course you are. Yeah. I love
that. But there's so many places with like-minded people. And if you're new to saving, go on and get some support from someone, because sometimes friends on the internet who can tell you, like I was here before, that can be a real eye-opener to what could be possible.
Knowledge is power, and you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, and when all else fails, if you do feel like you're at a point where your savings are adequate and you want to do a property journey, get some advice.
Yeah. Reach out and talk to some professionals about what you need to do to get from where you are to where you want to be.
But you also, like if you are buying a house, you need to know how much you need to save.
Correct.
So that's step one.
Step one is generally get some advice. And look, I know a lot of our time, particularly with first home buyers, but any buyer at any point in life really can be spent in that kind of exploratory journey stage. If you do want to know what you would need to be doing to get to that point, just get in touch with a mortgage broker ourselves or a friend, and probably not a friend unless they are a mortgage broker actually. Just start doing some of the groundwork, because there's nothing worse than getting into that point where you're saving until it hurts and you don't know what your goal is, and it turns out you could have bought a house 18 months ago.
Yeah.
That's pretty soul destroying, I'd say, actually. Okay, well, thank you, David, and thank you, Hope, for joining me here today while we had a little chat. Honorary guest Joe Rogan visited us there for a few seconds, so thank you for that. And to all of our listeners, if you've got any questions, as always, just leave them in the comment below.
Amazing. Thanks, Jess. Thanks, everyone.
Guys.
Bye.
Cheerio.